Yep.
Don't tell any bad jokes. Yeah, I guess so. All right, good evening, everyone. This is the August 7th agenda, August 7th meeting of the Winthrop Town Council. And all people are present except for Elizabeth Peters. And we'll start the agenda with item 141, consideration of a transient seller permit from three different people. The first one being Cavion Philippine Foods. Is that the one you had for comment on?
Pledge of Allegiance.
You guys did, didn't you?
Yeah, I gotta.
We went so many years not saying it, it's just.
I know, sorry.
You got another one of these? Let it go.
Yeah, that's right. All right, I got the old, is it on the back? You're trying to throw me off and again.
Those are the minutes I think that you're looking at.
Yeah, maybe so. You're testing me. Good job.
C minus.
I failed. It's all right. I can go up from here though.
Jim, you need a copy?
No, I got one, thank you.
Sure.
Yeah, no, definitely got one.
Nobody's put them on right yet,
Okay,
but they're working.
so comments on transient seller permit application for Cavion Food. No comments? Okay, the chair.
I make a motion that we approve the transient seller permit for Cabayan Philippine Foods. I second.
Okay, first, all in favor?
Aye.
Oh, Elizabeth this year.
We're
Elizabeth? Okay,
Aye.
let,
a little late.
all are in favor?
Yeah.
There's no need for roll call on that one. Okay, the next one is transient seller permit for Brigade Eats. Any comment on that? Chair will entertain a motion.
I'll move to approve the transient seller permit for Reggae Eats.
I'll second. Okay, any further comment? All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Let the record show that all are in favor. Okay, number 3, transient seller permit application for Miles Kitchen Treats. Okay, the chair will hear a motion.
Make a motion to approve the transient seller permit for Ma's Kitchen Treats.
Okay,
Second.
all right,
So-
any discussion?
So, yes, so one quick note about that. Is anyone here represent? Okay, so you were wanting to do business in the municipal parking lot, is that correct?
Yeah,
Okay, you might want to explain that for the council.
so I don't have like.
If she could come to the podium, I'd appreciate it.
So there's a microphone right over here, ma'am.
My name is Alyssa Chase. I do business not in like a particular building. I do it at my own home. And it's kind of like a side business for me to get my name out there. I sell baked goods of all different varieties. And I come in through Winthrop quite often, and I'm just trying to get my name out there throughout the towns and municipalities. Just to hopefully, my goal is to open up a business building and get my name further out there in other towns and stuff. And I know that the parking lot in front of My Sister's Pizza and Sully's Tavern is a public parking lot. And I see vendors out on the side of the road and whatnot, and I just wanted to try and get you a public place, but there's a lot of traffic, foot traffic, and regular traffic. Yeah.
Go ahead, Jim.
Quick question, how many days a week do you think you'd like be down there or be on the weekends
It
or
would just be on the weekend.
Saturday and Sunday?
Yes,
What would
yeah.
be your hours?
They would range like from probably like 10 to 4.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Are you gonna set up a table or do you have a car?
Yeah, I will set up a table and a canopy tent. I obviously will have a vehicle there, but it won't be selling out of the back of my car. I'll have the table all set up like you would as like at a farmer's market.
Okay.
And everything would be wrapped individually, just for sanitation as well.
Any other questions?
I think I have a comment.
Sure.
It's just, I'm kind of more concerned about, when we have things like the Art Walk Festival, how does that come into play? If we're set up, if she's set up down there, if we have other people set up down there versus people that are paying for tables for the sidewalk art festival. Does that apply or? Well,
I don't know if
that
she's
would happen.
familiar with what,
I am not.
okay, it's very simple. We have a art walk, I guess, every year.
August,
Just other events.
August 19th.
And other events down there. I mean, as long as you're okay with not taking permanent claim to that area and you're flexible on movement, you can go
Yes,
across the
I
street
can be
or,
very flexible. I can go wherever.
yeah,
Just not
absolutely.
do it that day, or I know it would be nice to do it that day, because obviously there'll
Or
be a lot
purchase
of.
a spot with that venue,
I'm sorry, what? Sorry,
or possibly purchase a booth or a spot with that venue would
absolutely,
probably fit in just
absolutely. I
well
don't
there.
know what the cost would be, but I can imagine it would be a ton. But yeah, I would have no problem with that. Like I said, I'm pretty flexible. Just looking to get my name up there and my product.
Are there any other comments, questions?
No.
Okay, I have. And I'm trying to determine in my head what the difference is between taking up a spot on the street, taking up a spot in the public parking lot. Practically speaking, there isn't any. However, I do have reservations about using the space in the public parking lot. I don't know if I can explain myself.
I think you did a pretty good job.
Okay, so we had a motion and a second.
Second.
Okay, all right, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay.
Aye.
Okay, all are in favor.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Good luck.
Thank you. We all have some visiting.
Okay. Item number 142, consideration of acceptance of an easement from the utilities district for the new athletic complex. That's the Winthrop Utilities District. Okay, any comments from?
Any information on that?
Yeah, so everything I know is in the background. Sir, are you Tavis? Great. Okay, so Tavis here is the attorney for the Winthrop Utilities District, and he's here to offer any explanation or answer any questions that you may have. There's a microphone.
Okay,
The mic on here.
yes.
And just to clarify, I am not the attorney for the utilities district. Mary Dennison is the attorney for the Winthrop Utility District. Use the mic, Is this all right? I am not the attorney for the Winthrop Utilities District. Mary Dennison has represented the Utilities District. What I am is a volunteer for the field turf committee. And in that, the survey, showed an old utility district easement given to the athletic fields back, I think sometime in the nineties. But it was very ambiguous. It was most likely that easement was there, available and usable by the town. The town owns, per the exhibit, I don't know if the documents were shared with you, but per the exhibit B, it's a survey of that. It shows that the town owns about half of that football field. And the school owns the other area. And that easement just allowed for the football field to run a track back and have some access there. This current easement is just intended to clarify that 1996 easement, be unambiguous between the town and the Winthrop Utilities District. And that's what the language of this easement says. Phil Gauthier, the town's attorney, has reviewed this. Mary Dennison, the water district's attorney, has reviewed this. And from what I can tell, everybody is totally fine with everything, ready to go. And this just puts on the record at the registry exactly what the relationship between the town and the water district is for that very small sliver of land that's just on the west side of the field. It's just kind of a loose end being tied up is really all this is doing. And this is the town accepting that easement, which essentially is a gift to the town for that area. You know, and the town, if there's any damage, I think the utility district expects that back, but that's all written in the deed. And like I said, if you have any questions there, I think Phil is the appropriate person to ask them that.
Jim has a question.
Is, this is, and hopefully you can answer this. I'm looking at the map here. I see the football practice football field, maybe. Where does this come in? Is this line here? Here. Is on the back, is over there towards where the long jump was?
Yeah, so
Along
the
that edge?
easement's the hash marks area on the, which should be the western side. So if you're looking at 202 off to your right,
Yeah,
the little hash there, which would be on the visitor side.
Yeah.
Sideline behind
Yeah.
the press boxes.
yeah,
That's what's there, and really all that's being put there is a little corner of the bleachers, the light pole. But it's just part of what was drawn in the survey and is intended to make it clear and ambiguous that the town has a right to use that particular strip for the athletic field there.
super.
And so that the utility district can't say, hey, what are you doing on our property? So everybody knows what's going on, it's written, and it's just right there.
Do we have a need for anything to tap into that for the field? Or is, there used to be a line in there for the field, the old field, I don't know, obviously need to call it the turf.
This has nothing to do with
With that.
utility lines.
All right.
This is
It's just.
just a land easement
Easement, just to say, stating that they can have access across
to
the.
have the right to install a light pole, the bleachers,
Yeah.
and use that,
Perfect,
that little hash area.
excellent, thank you.
All right. Any further questions or comments? Any questions or comments from the members of the public? Okay, Chair will entertain a motion.
I move to accept the easement from the Winthrop Utilities District for the new athletic complex.
I'll second.
Any further discussion? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Let the record show all are in favor? Yeah, item 143, discussion of the comprehensive plan update. Anyone here to represent the comprehensive plan?
Yes. Yes, me. So, and so I want to note that Jessica Cobb, who is the planner for KB Cobb, that has been working on this, is joining us. She wanted me to apologize to you that where her internet is a little spotty, so it's better for her if she doesn't have her video on so that she doesn't lose any connectivity. So, but she's here with us to chime in and to answer any questions. So Jessica, as I talk, if I say anything that needs correcting, please let me know. And I think we got at least two members of our comprehensive plan committee here in person, and another one, actually two more online here. So there are 12 material chapters in the comprehensive plan. And I'm happy to report that all but 3 of those have been or are nearing material completion. And even those 3 have been written, so they're still sort of a work in progress, if you will. So we're making good progress there. we shared the first chapter of one of those sort of finalized drafts on the website last week. And we're going to start doing that in a fairly consistent pattern so that people have an opportunity to read the chapters and to digest those. We don't want to overwhelm them with 100 pages of chapters right off the bat. And as part of that process, we're also seeking some public input because the public may weigh in on some things that we may find helpful. And in fact, this morning I had Steve McDermott who raised some really good points about some demographics that he thought ought to be included in the community profile. So that was much appreciated. But the hope and the goal is to have something ready for the voters' consideration in the November election, when of course we also have a town council election. So of those 12 chapters, 10 of them have a table associated with it that outline goals, policies, and strategies. And so far, 7 of those 10 tables have been completed, although those are also very fluid. So we may see some changes in those as the town manager and as the comp plan committee are reviewing those and adding some additional input. So Shannon had asked about having this presentation at the last meeting. And so I followed up with a conversation with her and said, hey, tell me exactly what you're looking for. And so these are the 3 things that are outlined in this memo that she came up with that she thought were interesting enough that it needed to be shared with the rest of the council. And that is, first of all, the demographics in the plan. And you can see a lot of that in the community profile chapter that's already posted. But the thing that struck me most, and Jessica, please weigh in here, something else struck you, or if you want to comment on this.
No, we've discussed this and you're absolutely on board. I think absolutely you're on track with this. So I'll just let you keep going.
Okay, thanks, Jessica. So the interesting thing about our demographics is the population is not projected to change hardly at all over the next 10 years. But what is interesting is the household sizes are shrinking. You've seen it from 2010 to 2020, and you're anticipating that as our community continues to age, you're going to see even more of that. And so you're going to need a lot more smaller housing units in order to accommodate people who are either seniors and maybe living by themselves, or maybe there's only 2 people in the household. And the same thing with younger people who may be living by themselves. Now, we think that part of that solution may come in the form of LD 2003, which is the new law that allows for accessory dwelling units and an additional residence on lots. And that's something that our new planner will be incorporating into our zoning ordinance in order to comply with the law. So that was number 1. That was, to me, the most striking thing about the demographics. Number 2, I think perhaps the key recommendation that we're seeing right now really relates to the review and update of all of our land use ordinances. And just one example, our subdivision ordinance was drafted in 1990, and it has been amended only one time, and that was in 1995. And so, as you might imagine, state standards for subdivisions have changed wildly over the last 30 years. And so, again, that's going to be a top priority of our new planner when he or she comes on board, is to start reviewing those ordinances and bringing them up to sort of modern standards. One of the things we want to do in the zoning ordinance is to give the planning board more regulatory tools so that they can consider some different uses in some zones where they're not typically allowed, but you still have the opportunity to manage and control those in a certain way. Some of you may know that I serve as the chair of Belgrade's Comprehensive Plan Committee, and I can tell you a lot, and they're also entering the process of updating their plan. And an awful lot has been accomplished in that plan over the last 9 years, which is really encouraging. But most of that stuff relates to a systematic reviewing and updating of land use ordinances. So that's going to be really important for us as well. And then thirdly, Shannon asked sort of what in the top 10 priority actions from the 2010 plan has been accomplished. I mean, I obviously don't have the context that any of you folks do in that regard, so you can probably speak to this better than I can. But here are the top 10, and a couple of the things that stood out is number 4. There's some support commercial development along 202 with common access to keep traffic moving. So where Main Street enters onto 202, that interchange right there seems to sort of accomplish that to some degree. And of course, now, you know, you have a really nice grocery store right there as well as some other businesses. And then number 10, expanding some public facilities. So we know that the fire station, we have a new fire station since 2010, and the library has been expanded since 2010. And again, I'm not able to speak to some of these, but some things, you know, we recognize are ongoing needs, like number 5, preserving roads with long-term planning. So that's something that I want to actively work on, is make sure we have a road plan. So we're not just fixing roads on a year-to-year basis, but we actually have a plan for improving the entire road system. You know, we talked about building downtown economically, updating the zoning ordinances, protecting both open spaces and lakes. I mean, those are all going to be needs that are kind of going to be ongoing. So the interesting thing about the format of this 2010 plan is it did not include those tables that this update will. And again, from experience, I can just tell you, having those tables allows you to sort of keep a matrix where you're able to track the progress that has been made on each of those recommendations. Also key to that is having a comprehensive plan implementation committee that holds town staff and the elected officials accountable for making progress on those recommendations. And so as chair of that committee in Belgrade, we meet on a monthly basis, and we'll take a topic and say, okay, and say we may invite in the town manager and the code enforcement officer, say, okay, where are we in making progress or in accomplishing these goals? And then on an annual basis, we report to the select board what our findings are from that year and what our recommendations are for moving forward in the coming year. So I think that's going to be really important to make this a living document rather than something that just sits on the shelf, because, you know, we are required by state law to do it if we want to apply for some grants. So, Jessica, is there anything you want to add to that?
The only thing I would consider adding, I had a request today that I break out the table from, aside from putting it in chapters, to put it in an Excel spreadsheet by the implementing party. So as you guys, as your implementation committee works through all the goals, strategies and policies, that may be something to consider in the future too. That's an easier way to track it by implementing party. But no, overall, I think you've hit all of the highlights. I'm really happy with the progress that we've made. I really appreciate the comp plan committee for their devotion and tireless editing and their attention to detail. They've done an excellent job, as have you, Anthony. And I look forward to working with the planning board in the next few weeks. But that's pretty much it. You pretty much covered everything.
So, and just to follow up on something that Jessica just said, that's exactly what we've done in Belgrade, is we've kept a spreadsheet that allows us to track recommendation by recommendation, whether something has not been started, whether it's in progress, or whether it's been completed. And that's been really helpful. And so we also have some comp plan committee members attending that may want to weigh in on this as well. But I also want to sing Jessica's praises. We've sort of agreed to disagree. I think she's done yeoman's work on this and has shouldered a really heavy load to get the plan to where we are now. And I think she deserves a lot of credit for that.
Thank you. Well, likewise.
St. Anthony's Word, I think we all thank you for your hard work.
I'm sorry.
This is Andy West, Chair. Just said trusting Anthony's word on this matter, not having had any direct experience with this particular comprehensive plan. I think we all thank you for your hard work.
I've learned a lot about your town, and I've really enjoyed working with everybody. So thank you. I'm really, really impressed with the involvement of your citizens on a volunteer basis. That's quite unusual.
Great. I see that James has a question or comment.
Yeah, are we gonna have a chance to review what's maybe already in place a little bit? Cause I haven't got seen it, if it hasn't come to me or.
Yes. So last week I sent the community profile and
Saw
the
that.
historic resources.
Yes.
So before we start posting things on the internet, we are gonna give the council a sneak preview of those things.
So I guess I have a quick question, because, you know, I look at our 10 priority action items in 2010 plan. I mean, you know, we've done a decent job, and I'm a believer in the way you guys are designing it now. We need to track it to project management. You need somebody to manage the project, make sure there's timelines, and make sure things are accountable and done accordingly in a timely manner. Are we still looking at some of those top 10 items? Because I don't believe all of them have been really hit on the bulletin list, so they can make it back into the new comprehensive plan. I guess I would ask probably to have.
After that, I'd like to chime in and then Pat, but comment.
Are we still looking at maybe, are we talking about, I'm looking at item 10 that dropped out at me.
Him through the chair, please. Just comments to the chair, not directly to the.
Well, I think she's on the comprehensive plan. I just had a question with somebody who was on the comprehensive plan, but that's fine. Andy, do you know, are we looking at the water and sewer lines, Mount Pisgah tower maintenance? Is that something that's made it back into the comprehensive plan?
Okay, Pat?
So I don't know that Pat can speak to
I can do-
that, but I can, because I know,
I can do some of that.
well, I mean, having seen the chapters that address that particular infrastructure. The potential expansion of public water and sewer lines is all throughout the plan.
Oh, I know,
Yeah, and really and truly, the town is gonna be sort of at the mercy of the utility district and of developers for expanding that infrastructure, because the utility district has a policy of not having ratepayers pay for the expansion of the system. So that means they either have to rely on grant money or someone who's developing something and then paying for that extension.
Yeah, and that's great. And I just remember coming to some of the comprehensive meetings and, you know, I don't know, Pat was at that point, heading up some of that, looking at where we could expand that. And I'd also talked to Dan Wells down at the water district, you know, and they're not hugely in favor of expanding it just because of the cost, which I understand, but me personally, understanding, you know, people dealing with septic system designs and wells and having all that stuff. If we could be on a public system, it saves a lot when you're dealing with lot sizes and restrictions and such, you know, it makes it a lot easier. I mean, I know it's a cost. And I've been on both sides of the coin, and I've used the services and I've had my own services, so I just know sometimes it's a great service if we could try to expand it. How do we do it as a town in different areas that are potentially buildable? Where, you know, how do we get that in motion? Do we apply for grants? Are we actively looking at that contractors to come in, and is the town water district looking? Are they more favorable or trying to look at expanding it, or are they just really saying it's a $2 million expansion, we're not gonna do it?
Yeah, and I just think, you know, they have a hard and fast policy that they don't seem to be open to budging from, and not having ratepayers pay that. And I can understand that.
No, I completely get it.
But there are some different things, Jim, that we could potentially do, and that is examining, for instance, the minimum lot sizes in the village district, which is our most densely populated and developed district. If you decrease the minimum lot size, then you can potentially have more hookups there to that system right there. So
Yeah, I just know, like, we talked about it way back, Andy talked about it, and it's behind Charlie's Chevrolet. There's a huge chunk of property, huge. And I mean, I'm sure at some point it's gonna be coming up for sale, or somebody's gonna do something with it. Knowing that the people that did previously own it, they have now passed on, and I can't imagine somebody's gonna be keeping that. But I know we have some infrastructure somewhere there off of 202.
yeah,
And to tap into that and providing something in there would probably be very beneficial. And I know it comes down to Apple Valley too, because we just discussed that in the last couple of meetings, or having bring it through the water line. Is it Dutchess Lane or something? So there was just a thought, and you know, that's where would we add this service somewhere, and could we budget it and look for forecasting down the line?
so one good thing is that there's plenty of capacity with the system. And that's mainly because of the closure of the mill. opened up a lot more capacity to serve more customers. Now, closing the mill is not good, obviously economically good, but it at least does have, the system has capacity. It's just a matter of sort of stretching out those tentacles a little bit more, right?
Yeah, that's how I see it.
And to speak to one other point you made earlier, Jim, I hadn't really thought about those terms, but I mean, you nailed it. Sort of tracking the plan like you would project management. That's a great analogy.
All right, so I have a few things to say, but I'm gonna defer to our citizen in the audience. Right?
So,
Can you come to the podium, please?
So comprehensive plan, we've been working since. We've been working a long time, long and hard, and we are working to make things that are very attainable, that the town can handle accomplishing. Where we felt like some of the things in the 2010 plan were difficult to attain, so maybe didn't get accomplished, so we're working hard at lot size and things like that. Part of the planner coming on, we are hoping can maybe have some skill applying for grants that might expand the road, because I did meet with Dan Wells more than once to find logical areas to expand the water line. And, oh, my name's Pat Ladd. Sorry. And it is $2 million per mile. I mean, it's very expensive. We do need somebody to write a grant. So I'm hoping by getting the planner on there that we can move forward in that direction. So really, we've put a lot of time into this and we appreciate you considering it. And Steve McDermott's been great in helping and giving input. And many of you have been to the meetings, so it's been great, but that's really the goal, is to make attainable things and make sure the implementation happens.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right, I'll just say something just because I was the one who had originally requested this, and I think I had started requesting it when I first came on to the town council in January. I was told that we would maybe have one in May. And so I do appreciate all the work that Pat Saber and Ted Hatch and Penny Prey and Pat Ladd have all put in so far, and I believe Mr. Ferguson. Yeah, Kristen Shumway, yes, they have all done a lot of work into this, as well as just Cobb from the KV Cog, and I do appreciate it. What I had asked at the last meeting was, we had started talking about the Norcross Point update, and I believe that it was brought up with redoing the ramp. There was some discussion about boardwalks, walkways, all kinds of things. And then Roy had mentioned, getting community input. And so that kind of turned on to me like, well, we have already received community input, I believe, through the comprehensive planning committee. And so I would also, again, really like to reiterate that I'd love to have an update. And so I appreciate you coming out and coming into the Zoom tonight to go over this, and for Anthony to work with Jessica for putting this together with the demographics. What I was looking for with the demographics when we start talking about that is better understanding what our community looks like. Whether we are an aging community, whether we have a younger community, we're looking at building a big sports complex. Are we going to have the students to fill that complex? What does the wants and needs look like of our town? And then with that, what does the income of that look like? Because then with taxes, when we go and look at doing reappraising or reassessing of tax, like of properties and things, where are we getting the money to provide for these long-term goals? And that's where we get from, like, the demographics and all, and then determining our housing needs. And then also the state has been putting forward a lot of changes to legislation and all with those housing things. So I do appreciate those updates. I did send out an email to Anthony regarding some of the data that I had seen for 2020, I believe, in the community profile. And just maybe getting an update on some of that, because I believe that was a little mismatching in a couple of the tables, and it is referenced later on throughout the profile, and just getting that updated. I still have some more to read through on that as well, but I do appreciate the work. As far as the top 10 priority actions, I did notice in the 2010 plan that we had those listed, and I also noticed that we have made a lot of big strides towards accomplishing those goals between the fire station, the 202, the expansion of the library. We've made a lot of great progress. And then just kind of going down and asking what we have accomplished, and then how has that rotate, like shifted now? So what is our community actually set forth as far as a new top 10? Because as a town council, that helps us it provides that vision for us when we come to budgeting, because I know the fire department in the next couple of years is gonna need a fire truck. That's pretty expensive. We've got the sports complex. Whenever we have grants, they're usually matching grants. So it's just things to start budgeting for. So I think that's very important. And again, just looking at any of these updates, I appreciate these. So again, thank you for all the hard work that you put in. I look forward to more updates as we go.
Okay. You got through it?
Yeah.
Perfect.
Thank you.
I will keep my comments to a minimum. As usual, I have far too much to say. I was part of the last comprehensive planning committee, and I believe we're about 50-50 on the 1 through 10 here. The water district was a major stumbling block. Okay, and the other thing is we did indeed have an implementation committee, but at that point in time, there was little support for it, and it fell apart eventually. And I think that the council probably has a duty to formally, that committee was more or less informally created by Patrice and myself and some others. And I think the council should appoint and formally support an implementation committee rather than it be something casual like it was last time. That's good for me.
Great idea, Andy. Thank you. I think that's a great idea, having an implementation committee that was appointed.
I think the idea is, we tried it last time and just didn't get the support. It wasn't an officially appointed committee. So I think it's time the council has an obligation to put some people out there with some background to do enforcement.
Yeah, I think having a standing committee just sort of sends a message that this is a priority for the town, for the council.
Right.
Part of the state mandate for comprehensive plans too is to have an implementation plan. And part of that is knowing who will be responsible for ensuring that it's carried out. So it's kind of like a workaround for the state requiring an implementation committee.
Thank you. Any other comments, questions from either the citizens or board? Okay, we'll move on. Thank you very much, everyone. Okay.
Thank you all.
Yeah, item 144, consideration of updated council rules. Elizabeth is here, but thinking she wouldn't be, I for one am not as prepared I'd like to be to complete this. So I think it was Anthony's idea originally to kind of discuss it and then move on to the next meeting with it. And I'd like to stick to that if it works for everyone else. Yeah, Dan Wells is here. He has a few comments, and then I'll so he can head out. He's taking the time to come in tonight to make a comment or two, and then we'll discuss it.
Dan Russ, you eat me.
I mean, you need to. I had Dan on my mind. Sorry.
Yeah, I hope it's good or bad.
So you got good thing you have a sense of humor. That's all.
No, I've been called a lot worse. So I apologize because I really just caught wind of some changes to the emergency management plan as of seeing this agenda being posted. So I haven't really reviewed what any of you guys' thoughts or that are. I haven't, as you know, Dan Brooks, Fire Chief and Emergency Management Director. So I was kind of offering myself if you guys had any concerns or questions about it. I'll be honest with you, it's very rarely, if ever used. The only time that I remember it ever being used was for COVID. But I think we learned a lot from that. It was the type of emergency that no one person had all the answers for, especially myself. We worked as department heads and a little bit more maybe as a committee to make decisions on the fly for decisions during COVID. The CDC changed their plans and policies constantly. We learned a lot as it went on. Like anything, hindsight 2020, we probably would not have done everything exactly the same, but we did it with the best knowledge we had. And part of emergency management, when I do that, I'm kind of a roll with the cuff where we've done this 100 times before. We're pretty good with it. But when it comes to emergency management, you have to think outside the box a little bit, and you have to think of what's the worst case scenario and how could that get even worse. COVID, I think, did give us a chance to feel some of that stuff out, to actually have to make decisions that we had limited knowledge on. I will say, we met 6 to probably 9 months every week. We had a weekly meeting. There were many weeks that we met twice a week, because a decision that we were trying to make on a Wednesday, we didn't have enough information, but we couldn't wait to the following Wednesday in order to make those kind of decisions. I actually got reminded by some people that were on that committee with me that there were several times we met 3 times a week, a Monday, a Wednesday, and a Friday, in the heat of COVID, trying to make decisions about, it was an emergency, we were in an emergency situation, so we were trying to make rapid decisions that affected the whole town, affected more so town employees and policies that we were doing in-house. So I would just caution that, I mean, part of the whole idea of having an emergency ordinance and having this going is the fact that you folks meet once a month. Now you have an informal meeting twice a month. And when we were talking meeting 3 days a week, obviously that doesn't really move at the speed that we would need for those type of things. It's a pretty rare situation. Obviously, we have no idea when it could happen again, but in 30 years that I've been around with this stuff, other than an ice storm, which was over and done for the most part of the week, this was really the only time that I remember having it. But if you want to, and I have no take on it whatsoever, but I would caution that if you're gonna take on a bigger role as a council during those type of emergency things, think that for 6 months, we met multiple times a week, making those kind of decisions and how that might affect us in those situations. Would we be able to be as quick to respond, to be fluid in a couple of directions, to try to prevent emergencies from getting worse, but also to back those off at the point where we felt like it was no longer necessary. Again, I just wanted to make myself available if any of you had any questions about what we've done in the past. Essentially, that COVID was really the only time that we did that.
So Dan, I just want to be clear here. Is there something in these proposed updated rules that is a concern? Because this doesn't really address emergency management, but it does address sort of how we would call and notify the public in the case of an emergency if the council had to meet with short notice as opposed to, staff.
Okay. Again, I probably am not 100% familiar with how you bring that. I've only breezed through it. And I guess I'm not understanding what the council's role. Essentially, what happened during that period is the council created the ordinance period, and from there on, other than the chair that was at each meeting, we pretty much made somewhat council level decisions as far as COVID went. And so the way I read some of that, I wasn't sure if you were trying to get the council involved with those decisions all the way.
No, I don't.
Okay.
Yeah, so these are, and this is not an ordinance, these are just rules for how the council is going to operate. And so there is something in here that says, in the event of an emergency, the advance notice requirement is waived. The reasonable effort to alert the public of the meeting shall be made whenever practical. And so it really addresses things like that, where if the council has to
I don't think you're
meet
trying to take over anything.
on an
You guys.
emergency.
No, and I'm not, it's not a power play one way. or the
No, I
other.
didn't say that, but I mean.
My scare was as if the council had to be involved all the way through, you're gonna get pretty upset with us. There.
Well, yeah, and keep in mind, Dan, these rules address when when a quorum of the council meets. So you're talking at least 4 people. So if you had a member or the chair, then these rules would not apply to any other type of meeting.
Okay. Again, it's pretty rare.
Okay, while you're still up there, Dan, we have 2.
No, I just like to say that, you know, this isn't a takeover, however, during that COVID period, we've now made advancements in Zoom. So if there needed to be an emergency meeting or something that involved council, we could have a quorum very quickly by the availability of Zoom, and that could be done daily or hourly or weekly. I don't think there's anybody here that would object to doing that in the benefit of the taxpayers.
And so that wouldn't take, you basically, if I understood what you said, you would suspend that 2-week notice period or whatever in order just to keep the.
Right.
meetings moving.
Yeah, this gives
There
it,
was an emergency, absolutely, and this was a national emergency.
Sure, thank you.
Yeah, no, I think you clarified, Dan, but I think it's just more of a, these are just council rules. I think they were dated back from 1985, might have been. So I think it was more of it just us, how we talk amongst and work amongst ourselves with governance.
I just soon have you make every.
Yeah. No, I'm pulling you in every time, that's for sure. That's our,
Like I said, we were
prerogative.
very limited
I'm
time.
gonna point you every time, so it's.
That's gonna cost you a lot of money. Any other questions or concerns? Okay,
Thank you.
sorry if I threw you off on a sidetrack. I just wanted to be clear.
Thank you, Mr. Wells.
Yeah, no problem. Don't ask me anything but one.
All right, my only comment is, and remember that this isn't about, me specifically, but just some food for fodder from when we finally get down to brass tacks on this. In section 2, the chair, then it goes out in case of absence or disability, at least 4 members of the town council. So the chair's been crossed out, which means that it's, say, in an emergency management situation, someone, the fire chief or the police chief, someone would have to contact one town councilor, no one specifically charged, having been specifically charged with that responsibility, and have them organize at least 4 people. So my thought is that the chair should be left back in there. And this might not happen while I'm the chair, it could happen 10 years from now. But I would think that if Dan, or say if Paul, needed the council's input, the person who would go to would be the chair. Just a thought.
My take is if it's something important, it's a special meeting, and they need to get a hold, can't get a hold of the chair.
Yeah.
Then they need to get a hold of the council, and the council can hold a quorum if they've got 4 members. We've got that stated in these rules. And I think we should move forward with these rules and get them off the agenda, because we've gone over them, and there's nothing against Liz. Liz has written these with Shannon. So I think she could easily probably sign off on these. I think she's online too, but it's something that's easy enough to move forward with. But I'd like to get off finish it tonight, vote on it.
I move that we approve,
Hold on a minute. The chair will entertain a motion. Okay.
I move that we approve the rules, the updated rules of the Lincoln Town Council, as drafted.
I second.
Okay. Can you hear us, Elizabeth?
What's that?
You can hear us?
Yeah, I could hear you. I just didn't hear that last bit.
Okay, all right, so, is there any discussion?
No, I have no discussion.
Okay. All right, then we're gonna vote. All that are in favor? Let the record show all are in favor.
I'm in favor. Aye.
Okay. We'll move on. Okay, item number 145, discussion of council manager priority items.
Okay.
That list is in here somewhere, I think. There we go. Has everyone had a chance to look this over?
It's it. Yes.
Take a minute.
Yeah, I already looked it over.
Okay. So, as Anthony so aptly writes, we'd like to prioritize this, and I'm perfectly happy, of course, with doing it in the manner that Anthony suggested. You want to think about this for a week, and we'll make our own, for a couple weeks, and we'll.
I mean, this can be an ongoing document. It doesn't have to be, you know, something that's set in stone. I mean, we've already accomplished one thing on this list already, so it's coming off.
Well, yeah, we put
I
it
agree
on,
with Linda.
okay, because we wanted to be able to see the progress we're making. And this is planning, we are planning on making this an ongoing document, sort of a guide to keep us on track towards what the issues are. James,
Yeah, I would agree that we just let Anthony, we hired him to do this. I mean, I think he's got a piece of list, he can present it to us every now and then, but I move forward and keep plugging forward.
So let me ask you a question though. Are there like 3 things on this list that you think are the top priority where we really need to be focused in order to get it?
Is that what you're looking for, maybe the top 5? top
Yeah,
3?
I mean, just so that we're not, so the top item there, dot terms and fees, so that we're not diddling with that when we say, Anthony, why aren't we making progress on the TIF extension? You know?
Yeah, I think
Purchasing policy.
some of them, I think we can put a number to them. If that's where you're thinking we should be at,
Yeah.
I'm happy to give you my opinion on them. Some of them, but docs and terms fees, pretty straightforward. I mean, I trust your opinion. You want to bring it before the council, you can, boom, that's a quick hitter, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that's not gonna be something we're gonna sit here and deliberate over hours and hours over. So, and again, we just hit council rules, that's gone, you know, reevaluation. I think you look at some of these, what low hanging fruit. So, you know, knock some of those off, but, you know, we can give you some big items that you think maybe that we need to just look at, or we can submit to you via an email saying, I think these are my top 5.
So maybe if we just like quickly went around the group and each person said, hey, you know, these are my like 2 or 3 things.
I'll be first. Go ahead.
Who's going first?
I think purchasing policy is number 1 priority. As far as I'm concerned.
Yeah.
Diesel tank would be number 2. Yeah.
go ahead.
I think I would agree purchasing policy, but also we need to get that eyesore off the beach.
I just have a question about the bottom one. I'm not to interrupt you, Bruce, but our RFPs for goods and services, is that different than the purchasing policy?
That would be my question as well.
So each of those things listed there, Shannon, regardless of the purchasing policy, the value of those contracts is going to be such that we would put those out for bid regardless of what the purchasing policy says. So what is typical, so you'll be happy to know, we've already begun the research on this, and we've solicited purchasing policies from towns all across the state. And this is sort of the first assignment that the new executive assistant who started today has, and she's already started working on this, is we want to take sort of the high points of some of these purchasing policies and craft our own policy. But it's very typical across the state to have anything above, any purchase above $25,000, let's say, automatically goes out to some sort of competitive bidding process. And so when you're talking about IT services, for banking, for sand. Those are all things that would qualify, as would our fuel contract. So, so we're already making some headway on that. We had a meeting week before last week, with our IT provider. And so we have a contract with them through 2024, but I sort of put them on notice that when that contract expires, we will be putting out that contract for bid moving forward, and they're gonna have to compete for our bid. And part of what's going to go into that is their performance under the current contract. And there were a couple of concerns among the organization about that. And so now they're crystal clear as to, if you want our business, you're gonna have to compete for it, and you're gonna have to make sure you're responsive to our requests.
Go ahead, Jay.
Anyone, I'm gonna just give you my hit list off the top. I'd say purchasing policy, and then I think number 2 is reestablishing capital reserves, and I would jump to the mill and tip extension. The comp plan, which is already in place, it's going now, I'd set forward, and I've got the road paving and maintenance plan. I mean, those are those 5 key things that we could probably really focus on now, and some already are in progress. I mean, I do agree that we probably need to do something with that, but the concrete pier and down the beach, but I mean, I think it's been visited, and how hot, and is it really, we're heading towards the end of summer, and is it really gonna something that we're gonna be able to tackle? It's just always been on the table, and it's always up for discussion.
So I will say in that regard that the architect who's done some of the design for the Old Cross Point improvements pointed out that first of all, you have to get DEP approval in order to remove it. But then he said at one point, I think it was the Army National Guard had actually looked at that as a potential training project, the removal of that, which would sort of eliminate some of the personnel costs.
Yeah.
For removing that. So that's something I'm still interested in exploring.
Yeah, as we should. I mean, I know people are concerned with the insurance on it. Is there any way for us to just put like a sign on the thing saying no trespassing? I mean, that kind of goes a long ways for covering ourselves for insurance. If there's signs up there and you don't go, you're not supposed to go in somewhere, no trespassing, and you do trespass and you do get hurt.
Yeah.
You're liable. I mean, it's just like anything else with the railroad tracks, or you go into a public or an area that you're not supposed to go into, and there's signs up there that says no trespassing, you do not use. We're no longer liable under insurance for that because we've stated it and we posted it. So, I mean, that would help a little bit probably for some of the fears of us and with that.
Yeah, well, yeah, I would just want to check with our insurer about what they might advise in that.
Yeah, I think it's one of our biggest concerns, people crawling all over it.
I mean, the road paving and the comprehensive plan, the purchasing power policy and the RFPs are mine.
Yeah.
I think we all basically have the same, same top priorities, purchasing policy. It would be nice to get a look at, some of the ways we can.
Right, you should like this.
You're on it. Look at, the initial stages of maybe the village revitalization, although I think that the planner would be somebody that might be able to help with that once we get them on board. The RFPs, I think, are important to get this thing in motion, and it would be nice to have some, maybe when we do put out the RFPs, we make sure we try to get all of the bits and pieces of it into the RFPs when it goes out. Like one of the fuel things you and I have talked about, like, the service end of it and some of the other stuff in the consideration for the RFPs. I don't know what some of the other stuff, sand we talked about, whether that's trucking, whether the town's gonna truck it like they have in the past, or possibly pricing it, landed at our facility.
Yeah, and in fact, I followed up that conversation with our public works director, and so when we bid that out, and I told him we needed to bid that out, that we would sort of give 2 options for bidding it. One would be a cost of our picking it up, and one would be a cost of their delivery.
Yeah. And one other piece, I know you and I have talked also quite a bit about, is that which one is it? How you got it listed on here? It was in process, unused vacation liability. I think that's.
Oh, yeah,
important
that's when we.
to get a handle on that and get that kind of ironed out.
I'm gonna give you guys an update through the town manager report on that.
Okay.
Okay, so everybody
Now, she
got their 2 cents in? Yeah, go for it, please.
Okay, so as far as my list goes, I'll just put in the comp plan. I think everybody's already agreed on a lot of these things, just because the comp plan is pretty encompassing to a lot of the things that are listed on here, including the downtown path, the beach grant, the Legion ramp grant, the Norcross development. I think those all kind of fall into there and it should give a priority. Also under that is the village revitalization and the sidewalk improvements. So with the comp plan, figuring out what it is overall with the Norcross development that we want to do amongst that. And then with the village revitalization and the sidewalk improvements, I've heard a lot about sidewalk improvements from some of the residents. And then the mill and TIF extension, just figuring out, I'm not sure what that really entails. And then, of course, the RFPs for goods and services.
Yeah, so the mill, excuse me, the TIF extension. We had a TIF for 20 years, it expires in 2026. And under state law, we can extend that by another 10 years. And so that's something we'll need Bernstein Insurers help with, but I think any reasonable person could say, yeah, that's something we should do and really make a concentrated effort on leveraging some private investment with those public dollars.
Okay, anyone else?
You got a hit list?
Well, it was mine and Anthony's combined, okay? And my purpose in asking to do this was to start a conversation, which clearly I did. Okay, or Anthony and I did. And I've been kind of keeping track of the comments. Anthony, failing anything else, Anthony asked for 5, the most important things, and I come up with 8. If you kind of give us all around, okay? And so we have the mill and TIF, the peer removal, a little low on the low side, but it's a heck of a liability. Purchasing policy, unused vacation liability, the diesel tank. And the diesel tank mostly because that has to fit in with any new purchasing plans and stuff for fuel oil. Okay,
So just a quick update on that, Andy.
yeah,
Both the superintendent and I had our air blown back when we got the cost of that. And so Matt's gonna go out and get some more bids just to see if other bids are comparable to that. And I think that can help us make a determination whether we honestly want to move forward with it versus saying too rich for our blood.
okay. A village revitalization and reestablishment of capital reserves. I think I was the only one on that one. Road paving and maintenance. So that's kind of your list. I know it's not 5, it's more like 8. And we know you're working on everything you can to begin with, but so Elizabeth, you didn't chime in on this one.
Yeah, she's Elvis has left the building.
Okay.
So, but this is actually a good list.
I didn't really feel the need to chime in. I'm here. I just shut my video off because I'm almost out of battery. So, no, I chimed in when I needed to chime in. I'm good.
Okay,
So this is a good list. I think it gives us some a clear direction of the major things you want to tackle and even something like, the TIF extension. We know that's on the radar, but that's not something that we have to do this year necessarily, since we've got a little time in there.
well, I think the list is also an organizational tool. And if councilors find things that they think that are beyond that list, even as a low priority, they should feel free to mention it during workshop sessions, and we'll make those adjustments.
Well, this is gonna be a dynamic list. It's gonna continue to,
You're right.
stuff's gonna fall off from it. We're gonna add to it, so.
Dynamic is a good word.
Yes.
Okay. We did that, okay?
I will add just one thing. When we draft the purchasing policy, we need to make sure that it is as transparent as possible so that the public is clearly aware of how we purchase our items and how we do the bidding process.
Totally agree, Elizabeth. And in fact, one of my peers who I reached out to get some purchasing policies. I think this was in Hollowell. And he emailed me back to say, the town's policies are on the website. They have a landing page for town policies, the purchasing policies there. And I think that would probably be a good thing for us to, just to have that level of transparency that you talked about.
Okay, any further comments or questions on the list?
No.
Okay, we'll move on. Item 146, consideration of personal property tax abatements. Any comments on that subject?
Yeah, so these are pretty routine in nature. These are both dealing with personal property taxes as opposed to real estate. And so this first item here is for a taxpayer who's now deceased. So we won't be collecting those taxes. And then the second thing is that statutorily, we can't collect any taxes beyond 6 years after they were due. And so we have $1,500 worth of those from 2017. And, you know, it only represents about 2% of what was taxed in that year. So, I mean, you're talking about a pretty middling amount of money.
I make a motion that we approve the abatement of personal property taxes for the late Stephen Weston totaling $437.23.
Is there a
I'll
second? Okay. Are all in agreement?
Agreed.
The record should show that all are in agreement.
I'd also like to make a motion to approve the abatement of unpaid personal property taxes from 2017 totaling $1,522.71.
Second.
Okay, any discussion? All in favor?
Aye,
All in favor?
aye.
Aye. Item 147, consideration of minutes for meetings of July 10 and 24, 2023. Chair will entertain a motion.
I make a motion that we approve the minutes from the meetings held July 10th and July 24, 2023.
I'll second.
Okay, any discussion on that one? Okay, all in favor?
Aye,
Record show all in favor? Item 148, consideration of recommendations from the appointments committee. Anything for us, Bruce?
David Dwyer.
Danielle.
Dan Dwyer.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, Dan Dwyer, a renewal for his seat on Board of Assessment and Review.
Okay, a motion on that?
So moved.
A second?
Second.
Okay, are all in favor?
aye.
All are in favor? Okay, all right, other business, town managers report. But
We may talk about this and then we're gonna have some other business I just want to talk about. A couple of meetings ago, we were wrapping up the books for the year for ending balance. And I was kind of wondering if you had any of that, because that kind of rolls into what I was thinking for us for having, some accounts set aside. But where are we at with the ending balance?
So Bernice's latest estimate is somewhere between $750,000 and $1 million. So the auditors will be here the second week of September. And shortly after that, we'll know for sure what that balance is.
Okay, other thing I wanted, I hate to get these things get lost, but I want to put it back on the table. We were talking about back when we were budgeting, about the old plow truck that we have that's sitting. And I'd really like to see, I know people have talked about keeping it. We've replaced it. I'd like to put it back out to bid and get some money back out of it, because I think that's worth $30,000 or $40,000. So I'd like to put that thing up to bid and get an auction or something to get rid of that truck and have it just sit right now.
So you're looking to do that sooner rather than later.
I would think we probably want to, coming up into that season, that we really want, probably, if it's a consideration, we want to probably get that thing out there.
Even, is it a backup truck?
It was one we replaced, so we'd already replaced it. We budgeted it, we replaced it. It's already, so it's just sitting there. And I know we're talking about thinking of backup, but you know how things happen for backup, especially if it's a truck. It's just gonna sit there and nobody's gonna use it. And then there's gonna have an issue. And when it goes
The
back,
worst thing you can do.
So
Alright.
I think if it was not a lot of value, I'd say no, but I think Matt told us in the meeting it was probably worth $30,000 or $40,000, and that's a heck of a lot of money that we can throw back at the budget, put it in reserve funds for something.
Yep, that's fine. Are you making a motion?
Well, I'd like to I can make a motion, but I didn't know what Anthony stood on it. I didn't know if he wanted to.
No, I think just the direction will do. So I have one question. Since we don't really have a policy for how we divest those sort of capital items, it sounds like people were pretty pleased with whatever the process was used in order to get rid of that patrol vehicle, correct?
Yep.
So at least in this instance, if we follow that same policy.
That's fine,
Agreed.
yep.
Yes.
And possibly set a minimum bid
Oh, good idea.
or, you know,
Yeah, we did that with the cruiser too.
Yeah.
So that was a,
Okay. And so it actually raises in my mind the need, when we do a purchasing policy, we probably need a sister policy to go with it about how to get rid of capital items.
I think you're correct.
And one of my last items that was in my mind is we sent out an email in reference to the Annabis property. And I don't want that to kind of go on because we're coming into that type of season as well, where we've been paying, keeping it open. And I don't know which property we're talking about, but I'd like to, if we do own it, and we own it from taxes or something, either we need to close it up and winterize it or get it back out there for sale.
So Jim, you're stealing my thunder. I have it on my
That's why I wanted to go first.
You definitely, which one is that?
I'm not sure, he'll tell us.
Okay.
Okay.
I have a couple. Just a couple questions, updates if we could in the next meeting, for our sand and gravel moratorium, where we're at maybe with that.
Okay.
And then also for the turf field, we had asked, when they presented it for a long-term maintenance plan. I've seen a lot of, proposals for sponsorship, which I think is a great idea, but just kind of where they're at as far as that, or as far as their long-term planning.
I think we were promised that maintenance would be carried by the project developers for 10
For
years.
10 years,
Then we got to figure out what to do after that.
right?
one.
Yeah, you know, a lot of things.
Put in the budget.
Yeah.
So one more thing, you and I had talked about that property out on Carlton Pond Road. Have you have any update on that? If you had a chance to look at it?
Not yet,
All right.
but it's on my radar.
All right.
Thank you.
All right, already. So I have some really happy news to report. Is today had a verbal agreement for a planner, an experienced planner to join us on September the 11th. So we were really fortunate and we interviewed 3 people, but we had 2 outstanding candidates. And the candidate that I'm talking about has worked in a couple of different Maine communities and a couple of different New Hampshire communities. And we just think she's going to be a terrific fit for both what the planning board will want and need and just a fit with our team.
Hired?
So she verbally agreed. I sent her an offer letter, so I'm hoping to get this signed.
You share it out.
Do you share?
Not until I have it in writing, but as soon as I do, I'm gonna forward y'all her resume. I think it'll be in.
Yep.
So that was happy news. And then today, as I mentioned earlier, our executive assistant Deb Nichols started today. Today was her first day. And so she's drinking from the fire hose.
Do you think
And
she'll be back tomorrow?
I think so. She seemed pretty happy when she left today. And not because she was leaving, but because she had a good day. And so she just dove right in and has already started a lot of the research on the purchasing policy. So I think she's gonna be terrific. And then last week we had our second deputy clerk, Amber Becto, who joined us, and she has prior experience in Lisbon and has worked for the state for 5 years. And so we were really impressed when we interviewed her. So these are going to be great additions to an already great team. So I'm really excited to be working with all of those folks. Yes, sir. I think Deb Nichols worked very, very briefly here. But she was the former town clerk over in Reedfield. And so, and she's a lifelong Winthrop resident, so she's got deep roots. So to speak to something that someone raised about the vacation accrual. So I had a conversation with the town's attorney, employment attorney last week about how we're gonna navigate that. He's given me a good plan. I plan to have a proposed policy for you to consider at the next meeting. I need to have some conversations with some employees before that. We've got pretty big tallies, accruals, vacation time, but I hope to have a solution for you to consider at your next meeting. And that's gonna need to be followed shortly by the same sort of approach with sick leave.
Yeah.
And with bereavement. So we're making progress there. I know there's been, I mentioned earlier about LD 2003, which is that new law that allows for accessory dwelling units and second residences on the same lot. So the state is offering grants of either 5,000 or 10,000, depending upon some of the characteristics of your community, to help fund the incorporation of the new law into zoning ordinances. So I applied for the $10,000 grant, which we qualified for a couple of weeks ago. I've reached out to the state a couple of times since then, just to say, can you make me feel better? Can you please just confirm that you've received this and processed it? When might we get our money? And they are not terribly responsive, but I just want to
Oh,
reassure
it'll be 2 weeks, and then you have to call and say, is anybody working there? Oh, yeah, I get a call back in 10 minutes.
Yeah. So anyway, I just wanted to reassure you folks that we have, that we've already applied for or submitted the invoice for our $10,000 grant. And that can be used to, so if we have the town planner working on that, which is my anticipation of what will happen, we can offset the time that she spends on that with this $10,000 grant. So it represents a budget savings. The foreclosed property. So the property that was referenced earlier, Roy, I shared the address with you. Maybe you can help me remember. I think it was 157 on Abessacook
I
Road.
believe it was, or 159, one of the two.
Yeah, so I have asked our finance department to stop the utilities at that place.
Yeah.
Our public works director has been in there and has assured me it is uninhabitable. Like he said, I plan to never go into that place again. So we don't need to be heating it and paying for electric there. So
Is this something we
stopped that.
repossessed?
It is something that we repossessed or foreclosed on.
Okay.
And so, as it turns out, we actually have, a small number of foreclosed properties that we never divested ourselves of. The unfortunate part of that is that there is a new law, I think that I've mentioned to you folks
Oh,
before,
yeah.
that once on a foreclosed property, once a municipality sells it, we get to only keep the amount that represents the back taxes plus any other associated costs. So if we have to spend on, advertising for posting the fact that we're selling this thing, or if we hire a real estate agent and that person takes a commission, or if we have legal costs. So whereas before this law took effect, if the town had divested of those properties immediately, the town would have collected the whole of the sales. So that's a bit of a setback. But what the guidance that we've gotten thus far from the MMA is that we need to pass an ordinance that lays out how those properties are going to be sold once they're foreclosed upon. And so I've already reached out to Phil Socher, and we're going to touch base on this later this week at the town manager conference, so that, because I'm sure Bernstein will create some sort of template ordinance that we can just sort of plug our characteristics into and adopt.
Isn't there a lot of, there's a lot that the state has to say about what you can and can't do as far as that. So they're basically building the ordinance for you.
Yeah, but it goes beyond that, because the Supreme Court decision came down and said this was a taking. And I asked legislation to be put in years ago, and MMA fought it tooth and nail. And the thing is it is a taking. When you don't return, money when we foreclose on a property, we don't return that. How do you even how does that pass a straight face test? Hopefully, and that's the thing. How does it pass a straight face test? It doesn't. So I'm glad this law, I'm glad that, and they're walking very, very tight, whatever, because A lot of towns out there have done this,
Oh,
and
yeah.
I wouldn't wanna be one of them.
I think we need to do
Right now.
something with the properties though, because it's gonna be, it'll be more tax revenue if we do have somebody that purchased them.
Yeah,
Put it
Oh,
back.
yeah, absolutely, but we gotta be very careful on how we're
No.
doing this, because,
No, I agree, but we wanna stay within the level of the law, but I don't think we wanna be hanging on to anything.
oh, no,
If we've been-
we're not.
There's other properties involved too, I mean, we need to do something.
and again, can't speak to past practices, but elsewhere, it's typical that once you foreclose on a property, you sell it within like 90 days, you know? And so we do want to return those properties to the tax roll, and I've already asked for these.
Thank you.
Do any of these happen to be on the waterfront, something that we might want to develop for our own use, and that's, no. Well, we might want to have some more lake access with another swimming area or something, but that's not the case with any of these. So, and to speak to Roy's point, the state also, we can't do anything until the state also provides us the notices and forms that we need as part of this new process. So, but it's on, again, it's on our radar and we won't miss it.
So what this boils down to is, we foreclose, we get to cover our expenses, and then any, extra funds have to go back to the original owner. If they're still alive and if they can be found.
Correct.
Nice.
Yeah.
I mean, it is a taking, but it could get pretty complicated.
As I just mentioned, on Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday this week, I'm going to be at the Maine Town and City Managers Association Conference, and so I'll see Phil and some of our other vendors there as well, or contractors. So that's always a good place to learn. And so, so here's what I have planned, just to make sure that you folks are comfortable with this, because it may be a lot for the next meeting on the 21st that begins at 6 o'clock. So I already have school officials lined up to speak about the athletic complex. And so, and in particular, you're interested in knowing about a maintenance plan 10 years out.
I'll get back to you on it.
Okay. So I had previously invited Angel Wings, which is the organization that has the residence houses, just to speak about, just to sort of educate you folks on who they are, what they do, how they do it, what the impact on the community is.
What is this again?
Angel Wings. So the residence homes for people who are in drug rehabilitation or in recovery, the places where they live.
Yeah, is there only one? Or is there two homes owned by the same, or
Yeah,
Ghosts.
two, is it the same location, just split up, you know?
Pretty sure it's 2 buildings.
oh. Two separate entities, Stephen?
Two separate physical locations.
Gotcha.
The job is in the paper. You can find it in the paper easily enough. All right.
So we had potentially talked about, we didn't know to what extent the comp plan committee was going to participate in tonight's comp plan discussion. We talked about having them back, but I don't know that we really need that after tonight's discussion. So I'm going to scratch them off the list. You'll recall that at the last workshop meeting, we heard from the police chief.
Can I interrupt you for a second?
Sure.
As one of the authors of the town council representative to the comp plan, I think Elizabeth ought to be consulted in whether or not we should scratch them off the list. She's still back there?
No.
All right, then you get your way, go for it.
We had the presentation from the police chief about the police department, and we went to his facility. I had mentioned I wanted to do something similar to each of our workshop meetings, so I was thinking maybe the ambulance service might be next. So do you guys want me to give John Davinsky a time limit on how long you want to hear him talk?
We just heard, we just heard the budget and everything, and I don't think they're gonna, unless he wants to give an update on things he's doing with the department. I mean, I don't really want to hear the budget again.
Yeah.
That's like a lengthy discussion. I really
A
don't.
good update of where he's at with a few.
Yeah,
things.
you know, a few
So-
things like that.
So how about this? So what I was planning on doing was also saying, hey, like we did with the police department, we'll go tour the ambulance station
Just a facility walkthrough.
either before or after the meeting. So
That's fine.
what do you think about that? Would you prefer to do it before the meeting, which, or after? the meeting?
Yeah, after.
Okay, okay, that sounds good. And then we also have, today was the last day for someone to turn in a bid for our heating oil bid. We only got one bid, which was surprising. This afternoon, I contacted a vendor who had told me previously that they would be submitting a bid, and they thought the deadline was tomorrow. I said, no, it's today. We're opening tomorrow. So we'll have that bid for you to consider, depending upon what the bid is. We did allow for the council to accept or reject any and all bids. So depending upon what the bid is, then you may either say, yes, let's contract with this outfit, or, you know, we'd like you to put it out for bid again. So just a heads up on that. So that's all I have.
Couple of extra things that I just had in my notes for the sports complex. So I have written down, are we able to get any more details on the contract with the developer? For example, the phosphorus control plan or an irrigation system, what specific type of material is being used for the field? They have different kinds of turf.
Oh, right.
So what kind of, does that really entail? And then will the fields be open to the public? And is there like a risk mitigation for potential vandalism? I know that's been brought up in discussion with other sports complexes around the state of Maine. And then how does that get covered? Is that something in their long-term plan for maintenance? Specifically like the announcers box. So if there's like kids bouncing balls and, you know, things like that, or spray paint, just things like that. Yeah, and I think I'll have some more questions as they come up.
So I think, did you send that to me previously at one point?
I did.
Okay, so I'll go back and
I was reading my
Okay.
email.
I'll go back and I'll find that and make sure that the school district has those talking points. And speaking of security issues, the police chief and I talked last week about how we might make Norcross Point more secure. So as to not let all the vandals in town know what we're thinking. I'm just gonna email you and, you know, you can let me know if you think it's a good idea or not.
Okay, okay.
Yeah, to kind of back up Shannon and start on the risk mitigation. One of the reasons there's no skateboard park down there is because we had so much trouble with vandalism that they disappeared. And we just couldn't get anybody to help us keep them repaired. And the vandalism was awful. And I know Lonnie still has current problems with, you know, vandalism down there. So Shannon's right on point with that question.
You sound like a skater hater.
Order. All right,
All right,
I move we adjourn.
So, excuse me, motion to adjourn. Go for it.
I move we adjourn.
Thank you. All in favor?
Any public comment?
Linda, move to adjourn. I don't just go public left. Is there any public comment out there? Anybody want to say anything?
Have a good evening.
Thank you, David.
David.
Jumping on your-
Okay, here we go.
All right.
We have a second?
Second.
All right, all in favor? The record show all in favor.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you for your help, Linda.
Hey, she keeps
I moved it along.
keeps this train rolling.
Oh, my God.
Some of us appreciate
It's
that.
like, let's go.
Come on, if you've been here.
I'll see you later. Oh, thank you. Yeah. I will, thank you. But if, we'll see.
So what do you like?
What does it mean? I don't know. Anything to say? Pretty obvious.
I'll be seeing you for a little bit.
No, you just.
Don't.
Right, you didn't go down to Florida, we're already saying.
It's been a long.
Yeah, you got to get back down there.